Dawn Robertson is the founder of the viral nude photography campaign, Grab Them by the Ballot. She has been an advocate for women's rights for 30 years, starting at the University of Pennsylvania, where she studied women's studies and history, graduating summa cum laude. Later at the Harvard Law School, she studied hate crimes and civil rights. After practicing on Wall Street, she founded an international legal recruiting company. She is now a contributing writer to the Good Men Project and has been quoted on the topic of female nudity by news media worldwide, including CNN and the New York Times. Dawn joins me today to discuss Grab Them by the Ballot and why she started her grassroots campaign. Welcome, Dawn. How are you?
I'm great. How are you? Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. So let's get right to it. What is Grab Them by the Ballot?
We're a nonprofit organization urging non-voters to get out and vote. And we use the medium of nude photography.
Why does nude women get people to go out and vote and fight for their rights?
It's a playful campaign, partly. It's a play on Trump, what he said in 2016, grab him by the pussy. So the nudity is highly relevant. We're talking about women's bodies. We're talking about our sexuality. It's also used for shock value. Women have been using nudity as a form of protest for centuries.
What are you doing in life before you started this Grab Them by the Ballot organization?
I had just come back from traveling for 5 years, actually. I was traveling down in South America and had actually just come out of rehab for alcoholism. I was starting my career over again. I've been writing and studying sexuality for 20 years. That was part of my travel. I just got back to the country, right? I really didn't know what America was like.
What made this go viral that people started paying attention?
Well, right after the Kavanaugh confirmation, I saw a photograph on social media that a woman had done, a photographer in New Hampshire, and it was called, she had the banner, grab him by the ballot. And I thought, oh my God, that's amazing. Why don't we do that here in Vermont? And I got 12 women together and I pounded the pavement to do that. I wasn't even starting a campaign. I was doing a photography shoot.
It was Breitbart picked up these photographs. Is that what made it go viral?
Our local newspaper picked it up, then the Associated Press picked it up. And then when Breitbart picked it up and put a link to our Facebook page in the actual article on purpose.
Was it ultimately a positive that it went viral?
For me, it was very positive. I just let it all happen and I wanted to expose America. Even I was shocked. People were gravitating to the page just to see what I call them Trumpers. Trump supporters actually felt and thought about women.
So what inspired you to do all of this?
It was Me Too. We're living in Me Too times. And it was the Kavanaugh confirmation. I grew up in Washington, D.C. I was living in New Haven. My boyfriend at Yale at the same time he was there, and I witnessed the nepotism and the culture there. Many people just like him. He's one of many. I know the culture really well. We're upper middle class kids living outside DC. A lot of politicians' kids, diplomats, very entitled, very privileged. This was 25 years ago. We didn't know anything about sexual consent. We didn't know how to communicate about sex. We didn't know any of these things, and these are really entitled kids. And I met many boys like that, especially at parties where people are drinking and things get out of hand.
When you started posting these photographs, what kind of backlash did you get?
I've received backlash all along the way, but I received backlash from the African American community, from women of color, because I wanted to have women of color in the photograph. And so I was accused of using people as models, objectifying them, being a white savior, tokenism, things like that. We need to really start working together here. And I see so many agendas that are pitted against each other. If I was hiring a young graduate to be the CEO of a huge company and the skill set didn't match, and that would be tokenism. I could have approached it differently. I should have reached out to the Black community or women of color and asked them what was the best way to approach people. That I should have done. I should have asked for guidance before asking. Absolutely, without question. And I could have had a woman of color as somebody collaborating with me.
Have you done that since to try to rectify that situation?
Yes, I have.
Basically, Breitbart was giving a link so that you could have haters come onto your Facebook page. I mean, it's apparent why they did that. And I'm just curious how people's reactions were as you went from one side of the political spectrum to the other.
I would say we actually received negative backlash from the whole spectrum. Socially liberal folk, they were uncomfortable with the nudity. On that end of the spectrum, it was more about you're objectifying women. The feminists were angry that we were using sexuality and nudity, and that we were, again, just objectifying women, which I find somewhat ridiculous because this is a conscious choice to pose nude. I also think it's about get over yourself and get over nudity.
There's women who make conscious decisions to do pornography. There's women who make conscious decisions to pose very provocatively. At what point are those women who are making conscious decisions objectifying their bodies? And why is that different than what you're doing?
I think if it's a conscious decision, nobody else can make that choice for them. And I think that's the fundamental ideology behind feminism, is about choice.
If somebody poses sexually, then there's other people who are now objectifying those women.
So what? I don't mind if somebody looks at me as a sexual being. Thank you. I am a sexual being. There's nothing wrong with looking at somebody as a sexual being. That said, nudity is not automatically sexual. We need to get over our fear of nudity.
What social norms made people feel nudity is offensive?
I would say religion is the biggest culprit, and obviously social conditioning. The shame and the guilt and the repression that we live with in this country, compared to, let's say, Europe, I think it's astounding. I was really shocked. We're not taught about sex. We don't know anything about consent.
You're also involved in a campaign to ban shadow banning on social media. You want to talk about that and what that is?
It was another campaign put together by the National Coalition of Censorship. We got a group of about 150 women to post nude in front of Facebook's headquarters in New York City.
It's kind of a discrimination against women that social media is allowing men to be topless in a bathing suit, but not allowing women just to have a bikini bottom on. Have you had any success in moving the needle towards having that allowed on social media?
We are talking. Has anything been changed? To the best of my knowledge, no. Will it? I believe it will in the next coming years.
Facebook is following society, or is Facebook dictating to society?
Both. I think Facebook could put in so many mechanisms. They could have consent buttons. They could have parental buttons. There are all sorts of things. And we're talking about artistic nudity. There's nothing sexual really about our photos at all.
You were involved in another organization called Women of the World, Women in 23 Countries Posing Nude. What was that all about?
Well, that was part of Grab Them by the Ballot. I wanted to do something that represented women as empowered and less angry and less taking a victim stance. And we wanted to show the commonality of issues that women face all over the world.
Were any people from any particular country more surprised?
I would say the most shocking was the Syrian refugee who sent in a photo of herself laying on the ground as if she'd been murdered with her top off. And I think the Syrian community was actually quite supportive, but still shocked. There wasn't much backlash because it had a very different vibe and energy to it. It was more artistic and it was a more celebratory photo shoot. So we didn't receive a backlash.
You also put in a amicus brief, a friend of the court, to the Supreme Court of the United States in support of a female public nudity law in New Hampshire. A friend of the court is basically somebody who's not part of the particular conflict that the Supreme Court is trying to resolve, but has an interest in the outcome and would like to be heard nevertheless. And I've never done it before, so I'm actually curious. Can anyone do it? Do you have to get permission to submit it?
I believe you do have to get permission to submit it. The attorney, Eric Isaacson, who was representing the defendants, reached out to me. So I believe the attorney submitting the petition to the Supreme Court. It's online if anybody actually wants to read it. I thought it was extremely supportive and persuasive. We spoke about the history of nudity, spoke about the social impact, women not being able to actually be nude in public.
Was this, to date, successful in getting women to vote and vote in the way that you would like to see them vote?
It has definitely gotten women to start, and men, to start talking about nudity and sexuality and what the hell really is choice and what is objectification and what does reclamation even mean. And I think it's encouraging women to vote in their best interest. Look at the legislative controls that we have out there that Trump is enacting against our body. Yes, I do think it's raising awareness.
We have a president that I assume you don't want in office. I don't want in office. What's your next move to get people to come out and vote and get this guy out of office?
We need funding. So that is our main focus. We have a GoFundMe and we want to hit the mainstream. I don't want to be singing to the choir here. I want to really encourage non-voters to get out there and vote, and for women to vote in their best interest. We've already been speaking with a few colleges to get chapters set up all over the country. We want to do a nice bucket challenge. And I'm writing a book, and I want to talk about kind of my healing journey and talk about activism and the holes that I found. You know, I had a very fresh perspective.
You're going to vote from Bali?
Yes, so you can register to vote from abroad. Absolutely.
Do you know your family's immigration story?
I know that my grandfather was on the Mayflower. We are Scottish and Danish.
How do you know your grandfather was on the Mayflower? I wouldn't be your grandfather, but your great-great-great-great-grandfather. How do you find that out?
Listen, I am not sure, but I know that my aunt was obsessed with our ancestry. His name was Dawn Robertson, and he was a lawyer, and he came over on the Mayflower.
So when you say American dream, it's really, what are your goals for yourself, for America? What would you like to see?
I would like to see just more unity, just greater racism and discrimination, hatred. The hatred that we're witnessing now and Trump is promoting, that's obscene. And it's interesting because I was a lawyer on Wall Street. I lived the American dream, and I'll be quite honest, it did not suit me. To me, it was too wealth-oriented, and I wanted to serve. I wanted to serve the people somehow.
Tell me how people can find Grab 'em by the Ballot. How can they join your cause? How can they support your cause?
You can go to our website at grabthembytheballot.org, and there's a donation button there, the link to our GoFundMe. And we're on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter.
All right, wonderful. Dawn Robertson, thank you very much. Joining me from Bali. It's probably midnight there now. I appreciate your time. A great organization. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you, Brad.
Okay.